Today, I will be going over the documentation needed to complete a travel reimbursement request for Tier 2 funding. First, I would like to point out the distinguishment between retroactive and reimbursement. To simplify this topic and have it catered to our usage, anything that occurs, whether that be payment, usage, or travel, prior to approval by our financial officer, is a retroactive funding expenditure. This is why your funding requests receive tentative approvals when we vote on them. So, for travel reimbursements, we still need to have all the correct documentations and approval for your group completed prior to traveling at all. We then pay you contingent on receiving the documentation I will describe in the upcoming slides. I will first go over the initial documentation we expect to be input into your funding requests. For hotel, you will have to know the hotel location, hotel zip code, the per diem rate, the number of rooms, the number of nights, and the rooming list with full names. This list should be broken down into 4 people per room, unless you have received prior authorization from the funding staff to have a different distribution due to necessary accommodations. For airfare reimbursements, we will need to know the departure locations, destination location, and the number of attendees. For mileage reimbursements, we will request that you input the number of cars, the IRS reimbursement rate, the total number of miles, a Google Map direction screenshot with both the start and end location as Yukon, a driver and passenger list with full names, and lastly, if this is a recurring expenditure, we will need a schedule for the semester. For travel reimbursements, we ask for initial and final documentation to be provided to us. Final documentation will be requested as a step in Kuali Build, and you are to complete it following your travel. For hotel reimbursements, we ask that you collect the original paid receipt with the last 4 digits of the card used to pay visible, a copy of the card used to pay with all the numbers except the last 4 digits blacked out, a finalized rooming list since there is a potential that people may have canceled their attendance for the trip. If names appear on the finalized rooming list that are not on the roster, we cannot fund any additional rooms they may have taken. For airfare reimbursement, we ask that you provide original paid receipts with the last 4 digits of the card used to pay visible, a copy of the card used to pay with only the last 4 digits visible again, a copy of the boarding passes, and a finalized list of attendees that only has the names that appear on the roster. Lastly, for mileage reimbursements, we request a finalized driver and passenger list with all the names appearing on the roster. This should reflect each day driven and for each car. We also need the number of cars driven, the number of miles round trip, and the total number of miles traveled. Prior to going over examples of the documents we are requesting, I want to discuss the common mistakes that we see when reviewing travel reimbursement requests. These include using the wrong date that we need to purchase by. As mentioned before, we should receive requests 6 weeks prior to traveling, not adhering to 4 people per room and per car without mentioning why, using nicknames instead of full names, having 4 or more non-undergraduate attendees, and adding a rooming list for them, using incorrect GSA rates, returning receipts with more than what USG agreed to reimburse you and expecting a full reimbursement, not using a Google Map image with the number of miles present and round trip. And lastly, attempting to request both mileage and car rentals. Mileage reimbursements can only be used on personal vehicles. Hey guys, so I'm going to show you guys where we want to see the GSA rates from. So you're going to type in gsa.gov per diem rates. And the first page that should pop up is this one, or you can always copy the URL from this video. You can search either by city, state, or click one of the states from that map. And the most important thing is to make sure that you're putting a GSA rate in to your request from when you actually want to travel. I also thought it would be very beneficial to show you guys the Google Maps directions that we want to see on your request. Start by typing out the location that you would like to go, hitting directions, and then making sure that your starting point is Yukon. After this, make sure that you add a third location, which should also be Yukon. This is in order to display a round trip direction map. This is because sometimes when you're driving, you don't always come back the same way that you left. This right here is also the page we want you to screenshot.